You're listening to Beyond the Buy with Alissa, Menke, and Angie, Grau.
Welcome to Beyond the Buy. On today's episode, we will be discussing how to build better recruitment campaigns.
Yeah.
And I know that Alyssa's got a lot of experience, so today I will be posing most of the questions so that we can tap into her knowledge base.
Yeah, recruitment is something that we have done a lot of over the course of the 6-ish years that we've been around. And I've done a lot in my previous career roles.
Yes. So let's go ahead and dive in. Why does recruitment advertising need a different type of media strategy?
Yeah, recruitment advertising is different because you can just post a job and get all kinds of responses, right? Like, oh, job opening. But the quality of those responses can waste a ton of time for HR. Getting the right people, sometimes those people aren't actively looking for a job. And so you have to be compelling to make them get to that point where they are curious enough that they actually put themselves, and think about it. And it may not happen overnight. Those really good candidates could take a while. Because we're talking about a major life change, a career change, potentially like physically moving yourself and family. So a recruitment ad has to hit on a lot of different levels. The other thing that's different about a recruitment campaign is, you want to get these quality leads in, but then you need to make sure that you have a system set up so that those candidates, once they've submitted their application, it's just the beginning of the process. And that there is a timely, I think is the big word I would use here, a timely and organized follow-up process until you get someone hired, and then they transition into an onboarding process.
Nice. Yeah, that follow-up communication is really important when you're attempting to bring in new employees. Yeah.
Particularly when we're talking about people that are looking for a job right now.
Yes.
Right? If I am without employment, there is a high level of panic, if you will, about I need to be bringing in a paycheck. I need to be putting food on the table for my family and paying for my light bill. This thought of not having a job really takes the stakes up high. And so if I submit an application, even if it's the perfect job, I can really only afford to wait so long for you to follow up with me.
Yeah.
And so some of these places where HR maybe wasn't ready to start actively contacting and following up with candidates and scheduling interviews, I can't hold on that long. I have to find something right now.
Yeah.
And so you need to know ahead of time, what are the needs? What are the timeline for those needs? And those are different kinds of campaigns.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know sometimes when you're planning, you have to approach it from a different space within the categories. There's some different things happening in there. How does that impact plan? What is that?
Yes.
And how does it impact planning?
So as a digital marketer, recruitment campaigns are particularly challenging because they fall into what is considered a special ad category for most ad platforms, for Google, for Meta, for TikTok. This is something that didn't really exist 10 years ago, 12 years ago, as I started running my first recruitment campaigns. Basically, what these targeting limitations, if you will, have presented is they're making it unintentionally discriminatory. You make these assumptions. Hey, we're trying to fill this role that is typically held by a woman. So I want my ads in front of women. They've removed that you can't gender target. You can't target by a super narrow zip code. You can't go through and use some of those toggles and targeting filters that we use from time to time, or in our case, a lot of times, to really try to hone in on this very specific audience. You have to be a lot more broad about it, which means you need to really understand how to strategically put those campaigns together so that even though you are hitting this broader audience, you're still able to bring in a highly qualified candidate.
Okay. So what are, this is a little off the lineup here. What are some ways you might do that? Or if you have any examples?
Yeah, so a lot of it comes down to that ad creative. You need to make sure that you have a really strong message and that you have visuals that help people see themselves in that role and identify pretty quickly, oh, that could be me, or, oh yeah, that's not. that's not me.
Yeah.
Those are the biggest things. But then also, once you get past the ad and they click into that landing page, one, that nice seamless feel of like, oh, this is what the ad looked like. And now that landing page mimics that same look, that same kind of copy brand or copy tone, that is. But then start qualifying people up top so that they know if you're looking for a senior level position, you're saying that, and you're not going to get these junior level folks that are just like, hey, I'm fresh out of college, but I want to, and then give them all of the details. Put a salary range.
Oh,
right?
please.
That's
Please.
not really, I would say, an ad specific thing. But again, I think it just helps everyone involved, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't get a candidate that comes all of this way that you're so excited about as a team because they're the perfect candidate to then make an offer and find out that they really expected a salary range that was 20% or 50% higher than what you're capable of offering.
Yeah.
Right?
Definitely.
Like the more that you can put out there so that people understand what to expect when they get on the job, the day-to-day of the job, how much they're going to get paid. Is it a hybrid situation? Can it be a remote situation? Right? Like at least this day and age, a lot of people expect some level of flexibility. And if you're one of those companies where that's not actually an option, you need to be really upfront about that.
So let's take a look at how to build the right media mix for recruitment.
So your media mix, while recruitment campaigns are a little bit different in terms of the tactics or maybe the tactical limitations, it's just like everything else, right? We start with this goal. We are trying to hire a candidate. What is the role? What is the background for that person need to look like? When we drive this ad, what type of like measurements are we going to be looking at to indicate, have we been successful? Have we not? And then how far down the food chain can we go in terms of, can we track just, hey, they're interested, click, so they hopped over to Indeed, and that the whole, at that point, application process is on Indeed or some other third-party platform. Or is it something that's internal where we're actually able to watch, hey, this campaign candidate applied, they've been through the interview process, we've made an offer, and we can see the whole thing to completion.
Nice.
We need to understand, is this candidate somebody that's probably local because it is going to require, like maybe the pay is not, super high enough that would entice someone to move across the country. Maybe it's the kind of thing where it has to be every day at 6 a.m. you're clocking in at the physical building, and understand, okay, what kind of geography are we potentially covering here in terms of an actual candidate. You need to understand, are we looking to fill like one role?
Mm-hmm.
Or is this like we've had a lot of experience with this where we are helping manufacturers that really kind of have this revolving door where they are constantly trying to bring in new applicants. Because when that's the case, suddenly these media channels that you're using become different, right? We're not trying to like thread the needle to find the perfect person. We need to bring in 20 people, 100 people.
Yeah.
We've got to fill these much larger employment quotas, which means suddenly more traditional tactics make a lot more sense because this is an ongoing need. So a billboard might make some sense.
Absolutely.
What are some other like traditional media placements that you prefer to see, like a recruitment type add-on, and when do those make sense in your mind? Because you're my traditional media gal.
Yeah. So for sure the billboards, if it is an ongoing position, you're constantly filling for it, or if it's kind of event-based, so if you're having a job fair or, participating in things like that, whether that be in-house, because some businesses will have their own job fairs, while others might be at a college or a high school, but making sure that you're out in front. There's also a lot of like the yard sign type things that I'll see even saying, about hiring. So some of the out of home is just nice to get in front of people in the different areas, where they're at. But radio placement can be great about reaching a broad audience. With billboards, it's more local, like getting people in that specific area. Radio is going to increase that reach so that you can get out into maybe the neighboring communities. We have like the manufacturing outside of town or those bigger corporations where they're, Frito-Lay, and you've got, M&M, all of that stuff. And so they're going to be reaching out. You want that radio placement to hit into Osage County and Jefferson and Jackson, because you're going to have people coming in from that extended area to do those positions, as well as from within Topeka. So radio and billboards for sure. TV is just a lot more expensive.
Yeah.
So unless it's maybe trying to get on a segment of a show, Red Couch or news or something, to promote like a job fair, a hiring kind of situation like that, event based, it's just really expensive to do that. So that one, and honestly, with streaming and digital, like you can hit a lot of those people by incorporating that mix of digital and not having to drop the big dollars for TV. But absolutely, radio and billboard, I think, you're going to see a lot more outdoor, I should say. You're going to get a good reach and frequency.
Like I said, we have a pretty extensive history running recruitment campaigns of all types, right? So some local, but also some, I would say regional, but like multi-state regional, where we weren't just promoting a job. We were promoting picking your family up and moving to a specific community because that community had such a need for workers. And so it wasn't really just like, hey, we're looking for welders. It was like, we're looking for people in manufacturing and people in education and people in healthcare. And I mean,
we're building a community.
Yeah, the list went on. Like at any given time, if you went to Indeed and you searched for that community, they had like 1,500 job openings.
Wow.
Right. And so when you have something like that, you do have to look outside of like their normal employment like basin of regular applicants that could drive in. And we took another couple of steps and we started looking at, okay, where are other communities where the average like pay range is below ours so that they would be enticed by the money? Where are the communities that have hotbeds of these types of workers that are potentially, experiencing like layoffs? We watched the news so that we understood like, oh, hey, there's a facility in Oklahoma City that just laid off 1,000 workers of this particular type. And we were really nimble and quick about getting ads out. And for those campaigns, I know that they did some traditional billboard, but we also did a lot of like streaming audio. We did a lot of connected TV, search. We ran a ton of search because those are the folks that are actively looking for that job, as opposed to those other vehicles were more like planting that seed. In some of the other recruitment campaigns that we've run, we have done, things that you can't really do now, where we've gone out and like really highly like geo-targeted. Not that we were looking for a specific like type of person, but we were looking for a person that had a very similar kind of job.
Okay.
And so you can still do those things, but not in every platform the way that you would used to be able to do it. But we were essentially running like a geofence strategy where we were like, hey, this job has great hours and great pay. And then we were hitting all of these retail locations where those folks are working on Sundays. They're making minimum wage or just above. And so our job offer or job opportunity for them looked amazing and very enticing. And that wasn't one of those campaigns where we could see like all the way through, but we know from the folks that like submitted applications and then those that showed up to do actual interviews, the majority of them had been exposed to that campaign. It was super successful. And so it all kind of goes back to, like basic marketing 101. What is the job? Who is the audience? What is a reasonable geography in which they might be coming? How are we going to measure it? What's the call to action? Anytime that you can offer a better wage than what they are currently getting is a like, ooh, I'd like to know more. Anytime there's a signing bonus, right? Like when you can have those types of offers in your call to action, it's going to incite the folks that have not only the immediate interest, but also the people that maybe aren't actively looking for a job, but see it and they're just like, oh,
Yeah.
Like, who couldn't use an extra $2,500 right now? Like,
Yeah.
I like my job, but
Mhm.
maybe I should just go ahead and look.
And I've seen a lot of, especially since COVID, lots of promoting of the sign-on bonuses. And I don't know if that's regional to where we're at, but I've just seen lots of that, sign on X amount. It's dropped a little bit. It's less than it was. But during COVID, especially, 2020, 2021, there were some pretty substantial offers. And I do feel like that's going to make somebody stop and, give them pause and think about if that's a good idea.
Particularly in industries where we know there are not enough folks to fill all of the open positions. So like healthcare in particular, education, Kansas in general kind of struggles to fill jobs right now. Like if you go and you look, we've got way more jobs available than we have people. And so we are actively trying to bring folks into our state, into our communities. We don't work with a single community that's like, nope, we're good. We don't need anybody else.
Yeah. See, and on that same vein, I know Topeka did it for a while, and I'm sure other communities have, where there's essentially like a bonus to relocating,
Topeka
and that's a
still
different.
does that.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So I'm obviously most of what we do is going to be employment based, but that is also a form of recruitment
Absolutely.
to bring them in. So
Yeah.
would you kind of approach it the same way?
Yes, and that is a campaign that we have done some work with before. It's the Choose Topeka campaign, where if you move in and you get a job at one of the participating employers, you can get $15,000 to move to Topeka. To rent, it's a little bit lower.
Yeah.
We also have military benefits if you've retired from the military and you can come here. Right now, recruitment is a hotbed because, again, we've got more folks retiring and getting out of the employment and part of their lives, and not enough folks that are like ready to just hop in and fill those roles.
Yeah. Okay, so we've talked some about the media mix, what channels you want to look at, but let's talk about the creative side and how you would approach that differently depending on the audience.
Sure. I touched on it a little bit earlier. It's really important that you have like these bold visuals, but that you help people envision themselves in this role, right? So you may really only be filling one type of role, but you're going to want creative that has women in it, creative that has every type of person that might fill that role, every color, every gender, folks with piercings and tattoos, folks that are super straight laced.
Yeah.
One of the job like recruitment things we've helped with in the past was for folks to work in the county like jail or retention facility, where the requirements for the job weren't particularly high compared to the South. Like, you were going to make bank. I thought, I was like, maybe I'm in the wrong place. But we tested a wide variety. Because, like, you think, like, oh, okay, I'm going to work security in a low-risk facility. And these aren't, like, hardened criminals, I don't think. Yes, I technically know. So you'd think it's like, oh, it's this big burly guy. But we had some ladies in there. We had a guy that had like a full sleeve tattoo. We had all of these things. And what we found through the data is more people clicked on those different non-stereotype, like, muscly men for these roles. And we sent a ton of job applicants there. Now, it was also a little bit of a learning opportunity for us because we sent way too many applicants to them compared to what they were able to actually facilitate. But if you have a strong offer, it needs to be in the ad, whether that's the hourly rate that they're going to get paid or their salary or a sign-on bonus, put it front and center. Lots of different creative options. If you have a job that is going to require relocation, that also might be worth mentioning somewhere subtly on the ad itself.
Yeah. So would you approach, active viewers differently from the passive audience who isn't, those who are searching versus those who aren't, and how that creative might differ?
So the creative for that more passive audience is going to change some because they're not going to be like, it doesn't hurt for them to see a great hourly wage or a sign-on bonus, but they're also sort of in that like learning phase where just understanding your culture and some of the things you do. But that's also where I see like a strong social media presence can be very helpful for a company because, you know, if I'm exposed to that on a regular basis, I start to really think like, oh man, that place must be really cool to work at.
Yeah.
Right. And so
That's a good point.
that's seeing that exposure around town. But certainly once you sort of get outside of that bubble of the folks that are going to see your social media on a regular basis or just, you know, be in town and know folks that work there and
Yeah,
whatnot,
for sure.
at that point you might want to start bringing some of that into like a carousel ad on Facebook where you're talking about, you know, the all of the different perks and benefits, what it's actually like to be there, because you're sort of building this case over time.
Okay. So you had mentioned without specific, jail's not the right word, detention center,
There you go.
that you had brought in too many.
Yeah.
So that kind of feeds into the next question of potential employee experience, right? So they're consuming the ad and then the kind of the actions that have taken place. And you spoke to it a little bit, but why is that so important for that experience?
Yeah, when someone clicks on an ad and they do the thing you've asked them to do, you need to provide some confirmation that like, yes, we got your resume, we received your application. So you need a notice on the landing page, you need an email. And in that email, you need to set expectations of what's going to happen from there. Should they expect a phone call? If they haven't heard from you during that time, can they call you? And if so, what number? You need to give people, like, it is so hard to be in a position where you are actively looking for employment.
Yes.
Help people understand what is a reasonable time frame to hear back from them, so that if by chance, you know, their application did get lost in the ether or in the paperwork stack, you haven't lost out on an applicant because they didn't know how to follow up. Or on the flip side, you don't get, you know, a dozen calls from someone in 2 weeks' time because they haven't heard back yet. You know, if it's going to take 2 weeks for you to process their application, they should know that. Like, it's not ideal, but also, you know, like that just may be the way that it is. So let them know ahead of time. And then have a process so that, you know, like outline what is the hiring process look like? Am I have to do multiple interviews? You know, am I going to have to do any kind of testing? It's becoming a lot more common that, at least in our industry, if I'm going to hire you, I'm going to send you some kind of test because I want to see how you think through the problem. What kind of tools are you going to utilize? Your actual output of what you send back, you know, like honestly, I look at it, but I'm looking at how did you approach that and how resourceful were you? Because those are the things that help give me cues of how you're going to be to work with moving forward. If that's going to be part of it, or like a physical is going to be part of it, be really upfront with that.
Yeah. I know you've talked a bit about measurement. When you're running campaigns like this, you know, what do you look at to gauge that success?
Yeah, I mean, it depends a little bit. On one end, we are trying to help our clients understand what ad creative's working and really driving in resumes or applicants. And so we're really, you know, we want to see a wide variety of ad options, and then we're telling you how those performed based off of click-through rates. But ultimately, I want to understand how many people actually applied for the job. And then if there's any way possible, I really want to be having conversations with the HR team to understand, were those the right kind of candidates?
Yes.
Because it doesn't matter. If I send you 400 candidates, if there were only 3 that actually met the criteria, then we need to like time out. Let's roll back and look at our strategy. Is there something that we could be tweaking in our approach, whether that's in the actual ad placement or whether that's like landing page copy? Maybe there are some qualifying things that we could say up front of like, hey, you must be at least 22. You can't have a felony conviction. Stuff like that, where they would automatically be like, oh, I'm only 19. Never mind. Right? Like, let's save everyone some time and put that information up front, because it's not worth hiding. But I really want to understand that lead quality. And then ideally, I'd like to be able to measure to that. That is not easy to do. You really have to have your marketing team aligned with your HR team to be able to get that all pulled off.
Yeah. Which isn't always a very common partnership in a business.
It's certainly like a best case scenario, but a lot of times that isn't necessarily the way that you're able to go about doing it. And so at least trying to have open lines of communication so that you can have those like little touch bases to understand from your perspective, how do you feel like this campaign's going? Sometimes that's the most important measurement. Does HR feel like this is working? Because that's where they live. They don't necessarily care if they get a ton of applicants, but if you've sent them like 3 or 4 really qualified, great folks, that campaign's been a success.
Yeah, definitely. So I know you kind of covered the follow-up, the importance of that already. So what is the biggest takeaway for, running these campaigns to help with recruitment?
I think the biggest thing that I would say is really think through your recruitment campaign from all angles, right? Like one, think through from the marketing angle. What are my goals? What's my budget? How are we going to measure this? Think through from the HR follow-up side of what does that follow-up look like? Do we have the manpower to facilitate said follow-up? But then I think taking a look at it from the applicant side of things and really understanding, how does that ad make them feel? Are they excited? Do they see the opportunity for themselves there? What is that experience like from the moment they see that ad until they have applied and gotten that follow-up email? What is that like? We're all so vulnerable when we're looking for a job. And so everything that you can do, I think, to encourage people to, really help prop them up, if you will. And again, setting those expectations, it's the fair thing. It's the right way to treat people so that they're not getting their hopes up that this perfect job is gonna, that they're gonna land it and start in a couple of weeks, when the reality is that your hiring process is at minimum 3 months long, right?
Yes.
It's not uncommon for it to be a very long hiring process. And again, if I need a job right now, at least then you've given me the courtesy heads up so I can go find something temporarily to get by so that I can still be available for that thing.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. I think having that human aspect and understanding like the applicant is a person who in a lot of situations is looking for something because there's a need. And just knowing that it helps you to communicate frequently and with concise messaging, and it helps them as well. And so then you don't have people who maybe decide not to apply in the future, or there's some of those downsides there. So keep it human.
And then when you're going for more of that long-term play, every message that you have has to be providing value that prospect is wanting. Because they are likely, one, really good employees. That's why they're not actively looking. They're happy where they're at.
Absolutely.
2, they're also likely the kinds of employees that are in high demand. And so the more that you can sort of set the table of like, look at this bountiful offering, the more likely you are that they're going to throw their hat in the ring. And potentially be willing to uproot their family and move across the country.
Yes, that is a big part of it too. So covered all the ground, a lot of information about campaigns for recruitment. So on the next episode of Beyond the Buy, we are going to discuss the value of live broadcast television. So that could be live sports, live news, and just the power and the value within those, and what you can think about in terms of committing to those in the future.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Well, thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you next time.